When I was listening to the predecessors, I got the feeling that you might perhaps ask yourself why I'm here, because I'm going to speak about something which many of you perhaps will not really like to hear. Namely, we have a problem with the patent system. It's true that the patent system is a powerhouse, like Dr. Inaugural put it, and also the other predecessors emphasized the importance of the patent system, and I fully agree. It has been an enormous help for developing technologies, for developing new drugs, for supporting research. But the question has come a couple of years ago, and we didn't really notice it, that we left the area with our patent system. We left the area of what the Europeans call technicity. And in particular, we have a gap between the Americans, who want to expand the system, the patent system, to all areas of innovation, and the Europeans, who are in favor of limiting the patent system to a type of technicity which the Americans also like, a fraction of the Americans. They call it MOT technologies, machine transformation technologies. And those of you who are familiar with the dispute in the United States between the Supreme Court and the Federal Circuit, the Court of Appeal of the Federal Circuit, know that again and again we also had in the United States the attempt to limit the patent system to technologies. Now, where's the problem? The problem is that this kind of technology today is still very important. For example, auto industry. In particular, in Germany, we are very proud of our beautiful cars, but I'm absolutely sure that in 20 years' time, in 30 years' time, there will be a major change in this area. And these old technologies will not really guarantee our wealth. And our wealth will result from life cycle sciences of all kinds. That is where people are much more willing to spend much more money than with technicity. And the strange thing is that it turned out by and by that our substantive patent law cannot be expanded to this new type of non-technical innovations, sciences. I would like to, the best proof of that phenomenon is that clash that happened between the Supreme Court in the United States and the CFC about a series of decisions which ended up completely controversial, completely inconsistent. And the question came up, does it really make sense to trust in the patent system that it would protect the future sciences if these consistencies should prevail? The whole thing is extremely expensive. And what should you expect from an expensive system that manages to acquire hundreds of millions for developing drugs? You know, a blockbuster developing a drug costs about $1 billion on the average. And the only way to get that money from investors, from the private side, states are not willing to spend that much money into this area. We have to That money must come from the private sector, where you have much more money. But the private investors ask themselves whether it's reasonable to put that much money into this area. And there are very famous cases in the United States. Probably the most famous one is the Myriad case, where very, very important drugs, anti-cancer drugs, have been developed, and then the Supreme Court cancelled the patent. And the same thing happened in Major with another drug. So the feeling in the United States came up that the Supreme Court perhaps thinks we should stop that development of expanding the patent system into this area. And that was a big misunderstanding. If you look more carefully into it, then you see that the Supreme Court was absolutely correct in canceling these patents, because these patents were based on the old patent thinking. And this is by far, far too coarse. For emerging technologies, you need a much better understanding of how you can protect intellectual products. Now the question is it possible? It's the reason why I'm here. It is possible. You can do it. You can develop science and technology which helps to develop, to expand that patent system thinking to areas such as, for example, for you, that is of greatest importance, the software patents. You know that software patents in the United States were liquidated, a whole series. And the situation right now is, there is an article that appeared yesterday that due to that series of Supreme Court decisions, a general feeling came up that all these software patents, life cycle patents, whatsoever patents, which are not of this machine or transformation type, they should not be granted. The article that came up yesterday was that after the last decision by the Supreme Court, it's the Ellis decision, the US PDO refused more than 1,400 patent applications. Not a single one of these 1,401 has been granted. Now, that would be a disaster if that would spread. If that spreads through the United States, it also spreads into Europe and spreads to India. The question is, will it spread that way? Fortunately, and that is the good news, why I'm here. It will not. First of all, the Supreme Court itself came up with decisions which are shocking to the community of patent lawyers. And if I look into this row, most of the patent lawyers are against what the Supreme Court is asking for. Now, my background is I'm a scientist, much more scientist. I think that Supreme Court has done the right move and the necessary move in order to protect the patent system against inconsistencies, as they are unavoidable if we just stretch the old patent system into the software area, into the life cycle area, and into these new technologies. It doesn't work. You run the system into a chaos. And what happened when the Supreme Court came up with this major decision, and Mayo decision, and Ellis decision, and Biosig decision, Everybody was frustrated, but after, it's now about more than 2 years' time, it turns out these guys are right, and this refined thinking about the patent system does work, but now we have a big problem, namely, the patent lawyers have to understand it, and the judges have to understand it. It doesn't help if we have a beautiful patent system which is understood by the highest courts in America and perhaps in Europe, but no patent lawyer knows how to deal with that situation. Now the help comes from science. I'm going to put it very short now. We are working in that area since several years. Some of you know about it. And we think that what the Supreme Court in the United States has been asking for has been transformed into solid sciences, which will come to the market during this year, next year. I know that academia in the United States, a good deal, in particular at the West Coast, not that much on the East Coast, but on the West Coast, there's a whole bunch of professors who share my feelings about the situation.